The heavy iron gates of Narzulbur loom before you, their rough-hewn surface etched with the marks of countless battles. A cold wind howls through the mountains of Skyrim, carrying the scent of forge fires and smoked meat, the unmistakable signs of an Orkish stronghold. You stand there, an outsider, a scholar from the distant libraries of Cyrodiil, clutching your journal like a shield. The guards' eyes bore into you, their axes resting casually against their shoulders, but their tension is palpable. They don't trust you, and why should they? To them, you're just another curious outsider, another set of prying eyes, but you're not here to judge or exploit. You're here to listen, to learn, to understand the rhythms of daily life within these walls, the traditions, the struggles, the unbreakable spirit of the Orcish. And so, with a deep breath, you step forward into a world few outsiders ever truly see. Where are you joining us from tonight? Are you curled up in a cozy corner of your home, or perhaps listening under the glow of a midnight lamp? Let us know in the comments below. We'd love to hear where your journey into the heart of Orkish culture begins. Because this isn't just a story about a stronghold. It's about the people who call it home, the families who gather around roaring fires, the blacksmiths who shape steel with unmatched skill, and the warriors who defend their way of life with unshakable pride. This is a tale of cultural exchange, of quiet moments and grand traditions, of forging bonds in the face of mistrust. Over the next hour, you'll walk these stone halls alongside our scholar, witnessing the dawn rituals, the shared meals, the laughter and arguments that fill the air. You'll hear the rhythmic clang of the forge, the low murmur of stories passed down through generations, the solemn oaths sworn under the watchful eyes of Malacath. This is more than a glimpse behind the gates. It's an invitation to sit at the hearth, to become part of the story. So take a breath, steady your nerves, and let's step inside together. The stronghold awaits. The rhythmic clang of iron on steel grows louder as you follow the scent of burning coal deeper into Narzulbur. Around a bend in the stone path, the forge erupts into view, a roaring beast of flame and sparks, its glow painting the soot-streaked face of Borgach, the blacksmith, as she hammers a glowing blade into shape. Her muscles ripple with each strike, the precision of her movements speaking of decades spent mastering fire and metal. She doesn't look up as you approach, but the tightening of her grip on the hammer tells you she's aware of your presence. Outsiders aren't welcome here, not unless they prove their worth. You swallow hard, watching as she quenches the blade in a barrel of oil, the hiss of steam cutting through the mountain air like a warning. For a long moment, there's only the crackle of the forge and the distant murmur of voices from the longhouse. Then Borgakh finally turns, her eyes narrowing as she sizes you up. You stare like a hungry wolf at a slaughter. She grunts, wiping sweat from her brow with a calloused hand. You here to gawk, or you here to work? It's a test, not a question. You glance at the pile of raw ore near the anvil, then back at her. Without a word, you roll up your sleeves and heft a chunk of iron into the cart beside it. The weight strains your arms, but you refuse to show it. Borgakh watches, arms crossed, until the last piece is loaded. Then, with a grunt that might, just might, be approval, she jerks her chin toward the water bucket. Drink, then fetch more charcoal from the storehouse, and don't dawdle. It's a small victory, but a victory nonetheless. As you hurry to obey, you catch snippets of conversation between the other smiths. jokes in Orkish, complaints about brittle steel, even a murmured prayer to Malacath for strength. This isn't just a workplace, it's a sanctuary, where every strike of the hammer is a testament to resilience. Borgach may never say it aloud, but in fetching her materials without complaint, you've shown something rare: respect for the unspoken code of the Stronghold. To take without giving is weakness. To contribute, even in the smallest way, is to begin understanding what it means to be Orsimer. The forge's heat still lingers on your skin as you're beckoned toward the longhouse by a gruff shout, Borgach's idea of an invitation. Stepping inside, the air thickens with the scent of roasted goat and hearth-smoked bread, mingling with the low hum of voices. Long wooden tables groan under platters of food, and warriors lean back on rough-hewn benches, their laughter punctuated by the clank of tankards. A place is cleared for you beside an older hunter named Gorbash, who shoves a steaming bowl of stew into your hands with a nod. Eat. Malacath favors those who work before they speak. He grunts, though there's a glint of something like amusement in his eyes. Conversation swirls around you, boastful tales of elk hunts in the Pale, arguments over axe techniques, even a ribald joke about a Breton trader that has the table roaring. Then Uger, a young orc with a fresh scar across his knuckles, leans forward, fixing you with a sharp stare. You, he says, tapping the table, Cyrodiil scholar. Tell us of the siege of Orsinium. The room quiets. It's not a request. It's a challenge. You hesitate, weighing textbook accounts against the weight of their collective gaze. When you speak, you choose honesty over pride. The histories I've read, they're written by outsiders. I know the bones of the story, the siege, the fall, but not the truth your people carry. Uger's eyes narrow, but Gorbash barks a laugh. At least this one admits their ignorance, he says, tearing a hunk of bread with his teeth. The tension eases just slightly as Uger launches into a version of the tale you've never heard, one of stolen relics, of clans standing back to back as the walls crumbled, of oaths sworn in blood. His words are fierce, unpolished, alive. When he finishes, the room's silence is heavy with memory. You set your spoon down carefully. Thank you, you say, meeting his gaze. That's a story worth remembering. Something shifts then. Uger leans back, arms crossed, but the hostility in his posture has softened. Gorbash refills your tankard without being asked. It's not acceptance, not yet, but it's a start. The lesson is clear. In a stronghold, knowledge isn't just facts in a book. It's the grit under your nails, the calluses on your palms, the stories passed mouth to ear around a fire. And sometimes, the bravest thing you can do is listen. The firelight in the longhouse dims as Gorbash rises from the bench, his shadow stretching across the packed earth floor. A hush falls over the room. Even the children stop their fidgeting. Come, he says, not to the gathered orcs, but to you. His voice carries the weight of stone. Malacath watches tonight. Outside, the wind has stilled, as if the mountains themselves are holding their breath. You follow him through a narrow passage behind the hearth, where the air smells of old ash and iron. The others file in behind you, their footsteps silent, their faces solemn. At the center of the hidden chamber stands an anvil, unlike any in the forge, blackened with age, its surface pitted with marks that might be runes or scars. Upon it rests a freshly honed axe, its edge gleaming even in the dim torchlight. Borgakh steps forward, her usual gruffness replaced by something quieter, fiercer. She lifts the weapon with both hands and turns to face the gathered clan. This blade drank the fire for 3 nights, she intones. Let it drink the blood of our enemies in Malacath's name. Borgach takes the axe from her, his fingers tracing the grip where Borgach's own blood had sealed the leather binding days prior. He turns to you, and for a heartbeat, you fear he'll demand you leave. Instead, he extends a calloused hand, palm up. You carry no weapon, he observes, but you carry respect. Watch and understand. What follows is not a grand spectacle, but something far more intimate. A low chant in a tongue older than Skyrim, the slow circling of the anvil, the pressing of foreheads to cold iron. When Borgach drags the axe's blade across his own forearm, letting dark drops splatter the anvil, the ritual's meaning becomes clear. Strength is not given. It is forged in sacrifice. A sudden commotion at the chamber's entrance breaks the spell. A scout, breathless, his armor streaked with mud. Riders from the east, he gasps. Forsworn banners. The mood shifts like quicksilver. Borgach snatches the axe from the anvil, her earlier reverence replaced by battle-ready fury. Borgach's hand clamps onto your shoulder, not unkindly. You see now why trust is steel, not straw, he growls. The unspoken message lingers in the smoke-heavy air. Their rituals are not performances for outsiders. They are survival. As the clan disperses to prepare, you're left alone with the anvil, the scent of blood and burning still clinging to your clothes. The offering to Malacath was a gift of rare trust, one the Forsworn's arrival may yet shatter. Dawn breaks over the jagged peaks, painting the snow in hues of blood and gold, as Borgach tosses a bundle of fur-lined leather into your arms. Prove your legs are as strong as your curiosity, he grunts, already strapping a hunting knife to his belt. The hunting party moves with practiced silence, Uger in the lead, his breath steaming in the frigid air, while 2 younger orcs scout the flanks, their eyes scanning the pine-dotted slopes for tracks. You mimic their posture, your borrowed boots crunching softly on the frost as you navigate the treacherous terrain. Every snapped twig, every disturbed patch of snow feels like an accusation under their watchful gazes. By midday, the rhythm of the hunt begins to seep into your bones. You learn to rid the land as they do. The shallow scrape of a saber cat's claw on bark, the tuft of wolf fur snagged on a thorn bush. When Uger freezes, hand raised, the group becomes statues. A stag stands 20 paces ahead, its antlers like a crown of bone against the sky. The silence stretches, taut as a bowstring, until a snow-laden branch cracks under your shifting weight. The stag bolts. Uger whirls, his glare sharp enough to flay hide, but Borgach merely sighs. City feet, he mutters, though there's less venom in it than yesterday. The storm rolls in without warning, a wall of white swallowing the mountains whole. One moment, you're tracking a snow fox's trail. The next, the world vanishes behind a swirling curtain of ice. Borgach barks orders. The hunting party forms a tight circle, shoulders pressed together for warmth as the wind howls like a wounded beast. You fumble with the flint in your numb fingers, cursing, until an orc named Mazoga shoves you aside and sparks a flame in 3 strikes. But it's your knowledge of herb lore that saves the tinder from dampness. Your quick fingers weaving pine boughs into a windbreak, while the others gather firewood. Around the sputtering fire, Wrapped in shared furs, the usual barriers erode. Mazoga teaches you the Orkish word for frostbite, Gurzmog, literally, tooth of winter, as she rubs life back into your hands. Ugur begrudgingly shares a strip of dried meat, though his eyes keep darting to the storm-choked pass. Something troubles you. You venture. His jaw tightens. Largashpur, he finally spits, naming the rival stronghold to the south. Their hunters crossed our markers last moon, left this. From his pack, he pulls a shattered arrow fletched with raven feathers. A deliberate insult, a challenge. Borgach snatches it away, but the damage is done. The storm rages on, but the true chill settles in the silence between them. When dawn limps through the clouds, the snow has buried all tracks, both prey and peril. The return trek is quieter, heavier, yet as Narzulbur's gates appear through the mist, Borgach claps you on the back, his grip lingering just a heartbeat too long to be casual. No words are spoken, none are needed. You survive the mountain together, but as the gates creak shut behind you, the unspoken truth hangs in the icy air. The storm was only the beginning. The scent of crushed snowberries and charred yarrow fills the smoky interior of Sharamph's healing hut as you grind another batch of salve between mortar and pestle. Outside, the muffled shouts of returning scouts blend with the distant clang of armor. Another skirmish at the border, another night of patching wounds. The elderly orc healer moves between cots with surprising grace, her gnarled hands pressing poultices to gashes while muttering curses under her breath. Stupid boys, she snaps as a young warrior winces under her touch. Think axes solve everything. Her eyes flick to your workbench, where your alchemy kit lies open beside bundles of dried herbs. Usirodil tricks won't help if you mash the roots to pulp. Like this, she snatches the pestle from your grip, demonstrating a rhythmic, circular motion that coaxes the sap from the fibers without bruising them. Her criticism is sharp, but not unkind. By the third batch, she merely nods at your technique before tossing another handful of crimson nirnroot into the mix. For the fever, she grunts. Their blades poison the metal now, Largashpurs doing. The admission hangs between you, heavier than the iron kettle steaming over the hearth. When you dare to ask how long the raids have worsened, Sharamph's lips tighten. She doesn't answer, not with words. Instead, she jerks her chin toward a battered chest in the corner. Inside, nestled among bone needles and spider silk bandages, lies a child's wooden toy, half carved into the shape of a wolf. The meaning is clear. The Stronghold's wounds run deeper than flesh. A sudden commotion at the door breaks the silence. Two hunters stagger in, supporting a third whose leg is slick with blood. Sharamph barks orders: boil more water, fetch the torchbug thoraxes, hold him down, and for once you don't hesitate. Your fingers move swiftly, measuring tinctures by memory as the wounded orc's growls of pain shake the hut. When the last stitch is tied, Sharamph studies you with a gaze that could flay bark from a tree. Then, with a huff, she presses a small clay jar into your palm. Emberfrost extract, she mutters, for the next fool who forgets how to dodge. It's not gratitude. But as the firelight glints off the jar's sealed wax, you recognize the sigil pressed into it. Malacath's fist, the same mark that adorns the clan's sacred anvil. A healer's blessing, given sparingly. The moment shatters as Ugur bursts in, his armor streaked with mud and something darker. They are at the eastern ridge, he snarls. Not just raiders this time, warriors, with banners. Sharamph's hands still mid-motion, her face hardening into something ancient and terrible. No one speaks. The silence is broken only by the drip of blood onto the earthen floor, each drop a ticking clock. Outside, the wind carries the sound of steel being drawn, of voices raised in grim preparation. Your fingers tighten around the jar. The Stronghold's trust, so carefully earned, now hangs by a thread, and the coming dawn may snap it. The great hall of Narzulbur hums with tension, thick as forged smoke, as Chieftain Largashpurs slams his fist against the oak table. The sound echoes like a war drum, silencing the murmurs of the gathered elders. His tusks gleam in the torchlight as he surveys the room, Gorbash with his arms crossed, Borgach sharpening her dagger with deliberate strokes, Ugur pacing like a caged wolf. Even Sharamph sits stiffly in the corner, her healing hands clenched around a cup of bitter tea. Largashpurs' dogs think we've grown soft. Largashpurs growls, tossing a bloodied banner onto the table, raven feathers stitched over a broken anvil, the ultimate insult. They raid our hunters, poison our streams. Malacath demands blood for this. The room erupts. Ugur snarls about night raids, his fingers twitching toward his axe. Borgakh argues for fortifying the mine tunnels, while Gorbash warns of winter shortages if they divert resources to war. Through it all, Largashpurs listens, his scarred face unreadable. You sit silent against the wall, your scholar's robes feeling absurdly thin amidst their leather and steel. Then Sharamph speaks, her voice like grinding stone. And what of the children? Do we let them starve while you men measure your honor in corpses? The question hangs, brutal and unavoidable. It's then that Largashpurs' gaze lands on you. Outsider, he says, and the room stills. Your people love to chatter over tables instead of blades. Speak. Every eye burns into you. You swallow, choosing words like steps on thin ice. The Legion, they call this the doctrine of measured response. When a foe tests you, you answer, but not in the way they expect. You gesture to the banner. Largashpur wants you desperate, reckless. What if you gave them neither? Ugur scoffs. Diplomacy is a knife in the back waiting to happen. But Gorbash rubs his chin, thoughtful. The Sirad said nothing of surrender, only strategy. Largashpurs leans forward, the firelight carving shadows under his brow. Explain. And so you do how sending a gift of forged steel to the neutral stronghold of Dushnik, Yal, might sway them as mediators. How public feasts could mask secret stockpiling. The ideas are met with grunts and glares, but no one interrupts. When you finish, Largashpurs exhales through his nose, long and slow. Malacath teaches that strength is truth. He rumbles at last. But even a wise warrior checks his footing before charging. He rises, the decision made. Gorbash, take 2 riders to Dushnik Yal at dawn. Borgach, double the sentries quietly. And you, he points at you, will write the message to their chief. In your hand, so if it's a trick, your blood pays first. As the council disperses, Ugur shoulders past you, his whisper hot with menace. Hope your ink is as strong as your words, scholar. But Sharamph lingers, pressing a withered apple into your hand, her version of approval. The seed is planted. Now, the stronghold waits to see if it will grow, or be crushed under the boot of war. Dawn paints the eastern ridge in jagged streaks of red as the stronghold stirs like a waking beast. The forge fires burn hotter than you've ever seen, fed by grim-faced apprentices who work in shifts, their arms slick with sweat despite the winter chill. Borgakh barks orders as she oversees the shaping of arrowheads, her usual precision honed to something razor-edged. You catch her eye as you haul a crate of scrap metal to her workstation, and for the first time, she meets your gaze without suspicion, only the cold focus of shared purpose. The southern wall needs reinforcing, she mutters, thrusting a chisel into your hands. The old mortar's crumbling. Fix it, or the next boulder they roll down the pass will crack us open like an egg. Your palms blister within the hour, raw from mixing quicklime and crushed stone under Sharamph's impatient direction. The healer turned engineer scowls at your first attempts, but when you suggest layering the mortar with woven iron scraps, stolen from the mine carts, her nostrils flare with something almost like approval. Clever, she grunts, pressing a poultice into your bleeding fingers. For a scholar, word spreads faster than you expect. By midday, 3 young warriors you've never spoken to arrive with armfuls of salvaged metal, dumping them at your feet with curt nods. The choice comes at dusk, delivered not by Larach or the elders, but by Gorbash as he sharpens his axe by the gate. The mountain pass clears at moonrise, he says, not looking up. One chance to leave before they seal it. His tone gives nothing away, but the unspoken question hangs between you like a drawn blade. Stay, and your blood may water the same soil as theirs. Flee, and every moment of trust you've earned turns to ash. You don't hesitate. I've already promised to write Larach's message. You remind him, hefting another mortar bucket onto your shoulder. Wouldn't do to leave it half-finished. Gorbash's whetstone stills. For a heartbeat, the only sound is the wind whistling through the palisade stakes. Then he rises, looming over you with all the subtle threat of a landslide, before clapping you on the back so hard your knees buckle. Good, he rumbles. Malacath favors those who choose their oaths with both eyes open. That night, as you etch the final words of Larach's missive onto cured hide, Uger slips into the longhouse, bearing 2 tankards of bitter mushroom ale. He drinks first, a warrior's precaution against poison, then shoves the second toward you. The scouts say Largashpurs moves at dawn, he mutters, watching your reaction over the rim of his cup. When you merely take a long swallow, ignoring the burn in your throat, his lip curls in what might be the ghost of a smile. Shame, would have liked to see you run. The jest carries weight. By choosing to stand with them, you've crossed an invisible threshold. No longer just an observer, you're woven into the Stronghold's fate, as surely as the iron threads in its walls. Outside, the first snowflakes of the coming storm begin to fall, settling on the newly fortified battlements like a silent promise. Tomorrow, steel will answer steel. But tonight, there is only the quiet solidarity of those who have chosen to meet the dawn together. The first war horn shatters the pre-dawn stillness, its bone-chilling echo rolling through the mountains like thunder. You're still pulling on your borrowed armor, a mismatched cuirass of boiled leather and scavenged steel, when the gates tremble under the first impact. By the time you reach the ramparts, the world below is a nightmare of torchlight and swirling snow, shadows leaping like wolves as Largashpurs warriors surge up the pass. Borgakh grabs your shoulder, shoving a bow into your hands. Watch the flanks. He snarls before vanishing into the fray. What follows is not the glorious battle of bards' tales, but something far more terrible in its precision. The orcs fight like a single organism. Borgakh's archers pick off riders with methodical shots, while Ugur's axe unit funnels attackers into a killing zone where Larach's heaviest warriors wait. Every movement is economical, brutal, honed by generations of survival in these merciless peaks. You loose arrows until your fingers bleed, aiming for legs and arms as Sharamph taught you, not for mercy, but because a wounded enemy slows their comrades more than a dead one. Then you see him, a young Largashpur warrior, barely older than Ugur, crumpled against the palisade with a spear jutting from his side. His breath comes in wet, ragged gasps, his fingers clawing at the ice as his life seeps into the snow. Around you, the battle rages on, but for a heartbeat, the world narrows to this one broken enemy. You don't think, you act. Dragging him to cover is a blur of snarled curses and slipping boots, his blood hot against your wrists. The storage shed behind the granary is empty, its walls shaking with each distant crash of steel. You press a wad of yarrow to his wound, reciting Sharamph's lessons through gritted teeth. But the real test comes when the door slams open. Ugur stands framed in torchlight, his face a mask of gore and disbelief. You waste breath on filth. He hisses, raising his axe. What happens next will haunt you forever. The wounded orc, with the last of his strength, spits a glob of blood at Ugur's feet, not in defiance, but in ritual, a gesture of surrender known only to the Strongholds. Ugur freezes, the axe trembles in his grip. Somewhere beyond the walls, a war horn wails its retreat. When Larach finds you hours later, the shed is silent save for the rasp of the prisoner's breath. The chieftain's knuckles are raw from killing, but his voice is eerily calm. Malacath teaches that mercy unearned is weakness, he says, staring at the unconscious warrior. But he also teaches that strength untested is illusion. He doesn't thank you, doesn't strike you, simply turns to Borgakh and says, "Chain him, let his clan see what they've made us become." That night, the longhouse feast is thick with tension. Borgakh refuses to meet your eyes, while Sharamph leaves a bowl of broth at your place without a word. Only Borgakh speaks plainly, his voice carrying over the murmurs. "Today, we fought as orcs, but you," he jabs a finger at you, "you fought as a person." Maybe that's worth something. The words hang in the smoky air, neither praise nor condemnation, but something far more dangerous, a question without an answer. Outside, the wind howls through the pass, scouring away the bloodstains, leaving only the hard, unyielding stone beneath. The prisoner's fever breaks on the third night, his cracked lips whispering the same word over and over, Gurzul, the Orkish term for hunger. You press a water skin to his mouth, watching his throat convulse as he drinks. When his eyes finally focus, they hold no hatred, only the hollow look of a creature pushed beyond desperation. "Our children chew bark," he rasps, gripping your wrist with surprising strength. "The blight took our crops, the elk herds vanished, Largashpur had no choice." His words settle like stones in your gut. Carrying this truth to Larach feels like walking onto a blade's edge. The chieftain stands over the war table in the longhouse, where a map is littered with carved tokens, marking dead scouts and poisoned springs. When you speak, his nostrils flare, the tendons in his neck standing rigid. Famine, he repeats, voice dangerously quiet. Borgakh slams her fist onto the table, sending a token skittering to the floor. Since when do wolves apologize for hunting? Their suffering doesn't cleanse their axes of our blood. But Gorbash, uncharacteristically, hesitates. He picks up the fallen token, a tiny carved wolf, representing Largashpurs' raiding party, and turns it in his fingers. Malacath teaches that strength feeds the clan, he murmurs. But what if the true test isn't crushing the weak? It's proving we're not weak enough to fear mercy. The room erupts. Uger shouts about betrayal. Sharamph counters with tales of winters past when Narzulbur itself teetered on starvation's edge. You wait until the tempest subsides before speaking again. Aid them openly, you suggest, and their shame will bind them tighter than chains. Refuse, and their survivors will return twice as vicious. Larach's laugh is a bitter thing. You think like a merchant, not a warrior. Honor isn't bartered. Yet when dawn comes, his decision shocks the stronghold. A contingent of hunters will escort the prisoners home, bearing sacks of salted meat and seed grain. Not as tribute, but as a challenge. Let them eat their pride with our bread, he growls, and remember who fed them when their own strength failed. The gesture is met with mutters and scowls, but something shifts when the Largashpur warriors kneel in the snow, not in submission, but in stunned silence. Their leader, a grizzled veteran, missing 2 fingers, presses his forehead to the offered provisions, a gesture of respect, so raw it stills even Borgakh's sharp tongue. As the gates close behind them, Gorbash exhales sharply. Well, scholar, either you've made peace or taught them exactly where to strike when winter comes. The unspoken truth lingers. This is no tidy ending. The seeds planted today may grow into alliance or fresh betrayal. But for the first time in generations, the orcs of the Ruthgarian peaks have dared to ask, what if survival doesn't always mean slaughter? The compromise hangs heavy in the air, as fragile as the morning frost on Narzulbur's battlements. The prisoners, now laborers, haul sacks of grain under the watchful eyes of Borgakh's sentries, their chains replaced by the unspoken weight of shame. You stand beside Larach as he carves the final rune into the message stick, its grooves stained with ochre to mark it as both warning and offering. Their chief will see this as weakness, he mutters, though his fingers linger on the symbol for honor bound, an ancient term for truce. Or he'll see a blade disguised as bread. It's your voice that breaks the silence. Let me deliver it. The words taste like cold iron, but you don't flinch. Larach's gaze could strip bark from a tree. You'd walk into their stronghold alone. Even Malacath's patience has limits, but the flicker in his eyes betrays something else: calculation. A foreigner's death would martyr no one, by no vengeance. The perfect neutral tongue. The gates creak open at first light, revealing the snow-choked pass where Largashpur's warriors had stormed days before. Your breath fogs in the air as you adjust the message stick across your back, its weight a constant reminder of the line you tread between peace and provocation. Then footsteps crunch behind you, Uger, his axe strapped across his shoulders, his expression unreadable. Someone has to make sure you don't trip on your own robes, he grunts, falling into step without waiting for agreement. The journey is a gauntlet of silence and sidelong glances. Uger scans every outcrop for ambush, his fingers never far from his weapon, while you measure the thinning trees for signs of blight. By midday, the truth is unavoidable. The land here is sick. Streams run cloudy with silt, their banks littered with the bones of starved animals. Uger kicks at a dead sapling, his scowl deepening. This isn't raiding territory, he mutters. This is graveyard dirt. When the first Largashpur scout arrows land at your feet, Uger's hand flies to his axe. But you step forward, palms open, the message stick raised high. The scout who emerges is gaunt, his armor hanging loose, yet his grip on the bow remains steady. Narzulbur's pet scholar. He sneers, though his eyes dart to the stick's ochre stains. Come to gloat, you say nothing. Simply unstrap the stick and hold it out, letting the runes speak for themselves. The plea for parley, the offer of shared hunting grounds, the stark warning etched beneath. A clan that eats its own will choke on its bones. The scout's lips twist, but he takes it. As he vanishes into the pines, Uger exhales sharply. If they kill us now, at least we won't have to hear Larach say, "I told you so." The weight stretches like a bowstring. Then, against all odds, a horn sounds not the battle cry you expected, but the low, mournful note reserved for honored guests. The scout reappears, his posture stiff with reluctance. Chief Masgar will see you, he says, jerking his chin toward the path. But leave your steel here, and your pride. Uger hesitates, his knuckles whitening on his axe grip. You meet his gaze, expecting mockery, but find only a grudging curiosity. You really think words can mend this? He asks, quieter than you've ever heard him. The answer isn't simple. You think of Borgach's anvil, of Sharamph's bitter tease, of Larach's impossible choice between mercy and survival. No, you admit, unbuckling your dagger. But maybe they can plant something worth growing. Uger stares at you for a long moment. Then, with a curse that's almost affectionate, he pulls the axe from his back and lays it in the snow. Side by side, you step onto the path, leaving weapons behind but carrying something far heavier. The fragile hope that even in Skyrim's hardest hearts, there's room for more than just survival. The pine branches snap like brittle bones underfoot as you and Uger pick your way down the rocky slope toward Largashpurs territory. Every gust of wind sets his shoulders tensing, his hand drifting toward the axe he left buried in the snow. Should have brought the damn weapon, he mutters for the third time, eyeing the claw marks raked into a nearby trunk. No orc worth his salt walks into wolf country barehanded. You don't remind him that the terms of parley demanded it. Some lessons stick better when learned through gritted teeth. The ambush comes where the path narrows between two boulders, the perfect choke point for predators. One moment, the forest is still. The next, a pair of frost wolves lunges from the shadows, their matted fur reeking of old blood. Uger reacts first, shoving you behind him as the lead beast's fangs graze his forearm. There's no time to think, only act. You snatch a fallen branch, jamming it crosswise into the second wolf's jaws as it leaps, using its own momentum to twist it sideways into the rocks. The crack of ribs is sickening, but the beast keeps coming, its yellowed teeth snapping inches from your face until Uger's boot crushes its windpipe. The fight is over in breaths, leaving both of you panting against the bloodied snow. Uger examines the gashes on his arm with a clinical detachment, then fixes you with a look that's equal parts annoyance and something darker, sharper. You fight like a cornered fox, he grunts, tearing a strip from his tunic to bind the wound. All teeth and no plan. It's not praise, not quite, but when he tosses you the dead wolf's fang, a hunter's trophy, you pocket it without a word. The rest of the descent is quieter, the tension between you thawing like ice under a weak sun. Uger even points out the subtle trail markers his own clan uses. A notch in a birch trunk, stones stacked in a particular pattern, though he stops short of explaining their full meaning. By the time Largashpurs' jagged palisade appears through the trees, the dynamic has shifted. He walks half a step closer now, his posture looser, as if some unspoken test has been passed. Then the gates groan open, revealing a scene that steals the breath from your lungs, where Narzulbur's strength lies in its roaring forges and stocked larders. Largashpur is a stronghold on the brink. Children with hollow cheeks huddle around a meager fire, their eyes too old for their faces. Warriors sharpen blades with grim focus, their armor patched with scraps of hide. At the center stands Chief Masgur, her frame gaunt but unbent, her gaze locking onto the message stick in your hands like a hawk sighting prey. Well, she rasps, her voice like gravel. Did Larak send a diplomat or a spy? Uger stiffens beside you, but you step forward, holding out the stick with both hands. A gesture of respect, not submission. Neither, you say, loud enough for the gathered clan to hear. He sent the truth. The carved runes catch the firelight as Masgur takes it, her fingers tracing the symbols for famine and shared hunt with something like recognition. Behind her, a warrior snarls, but she silences him with a look. For the first time since the wolves, you dare to hope. The real battle was never in the snow. It's in the silence that follows, in the space between pride and survival, where even the fiercest orcs must choose what kind of strength matters most. Chief Masgur's grip tightens around the message stick, her knuckles pale as bleached bone. The firelight carves deep shadows under her eyes as she studies the runes, her silence heavier than any shouted curse. Around her, the clan holds its breath, warriors with hands on their axes, elders with faces like storm-carved stone. Then, from the back of the crowd, a voice like grinding boulders splits the tension. Words are cheap. Let's see their steel. The speaker shoulders his way forward, his tusks gleaming with iron rings. Garral, Largashpur's war chief, his armor stitched together from the hides of beasts, even Narzulbur hunters fear. He stops just close enough for you to smell the rancid grease in his braids, his gaze flicking to Uger's fresh wounds with predatory interest. Your chief offers meat from his table. He sneers, jerking his chin at the message stick. We are not beggars to lap at his scraps. If Larak wants peace, let him earn it under open sky. Uger bristles, but you step between them before blades can clear sheaths. Name your terms, you say, meeting Garral's stare without flinching. The challenge hangs in the air like the first spark before a wildfire. Garral's smile is all teeth. The frost tusks have returned to Dead Man's Gorge. One bull would feed both clans for a fortnight. A murmur ripples through the crowd. Frost tusks are no ordinary prey. Their hides turn blades, their charge can flatten a stone wall, and they hunt in packs with eerie coordination. Garral knows this, revels in it. We'll hunt together, he continues, your Narzulbur allies and mine. But you, he jabs a finger at your chest, will ride at my side. Let's see if Scholar's ink runs thicker than orc blood when the tusks charge. The gamble is clear, refuse, and any hope of trust shatters. Accept, and you step into a trial where a misplaced arrow could solve Largashpurs' problems without breaking parley. Ugur's hand clamps onto your shoulder, his whisper urgent. That gorge is a death trap. Even if the beasts don't kill you, he might. But Masgur is watching, her fingers tracing the shared hunt rune on the stick. This is the test, not just of your courage, but of whether two clans who have traded blows for generations can trade something rarer, trust. You exhale slowly, then nod. At dawn, then, Garal's laughter follows you all the way back to the gates, but it's the silence of the starving children that lingers. The hunt will be more than a trial. It's a threadbare hope, stitched together with desperation and the unspoken truth that even the fiercest warriors can't eat pride. Tomorrow, the gorge will decide whether that thread holds or snaps. Dawn in Dead Man's Gorge is a blade of pale light, cutting through walls of ice. The air so cold, it burns your lungs with each breath. Ugur adjusts the straps of his hunting harness beside you, his breath fogging as he eyes the distant shapes moving along the ridge. Massive, shaggy silhouettes with tusks like curved swords. Frost tusks. Even from here, you can hear the deep, rumbling clicks they use to communicate, a sound that vibrates through the stone under your boots. Garal smirks as he tosses you a spear, its tip blackened with some alchemical coating. Try not to scream when they charge, he says. It ruins the hunt. The plan is simple in theory. Drive the herd toward the narrowest part of the gorge, where archers can pick off the stragglers. In practice, it's chaos. The moment the horns sound, the lead bull whirls with terrifying speed, its tusks gouging furrows in the ice as it charges straight for Garal's position. You're moving before you think, hurling your spear into the beast's flank. Not enough to stop it, but enough to make it falter. Ugur seizes the opening, leaping onto its back with a hooked knife, sawing at the thick tendons in its neck, while Garal distracts it with feints. The frost tusk's roar shakes snow from the cliffs as it collapses, its hot blood steaming in the snow. Silence falls, broken only by the rasp of your breath. Garal wipes his axe on his sleeve, eyeing the kill with grudging respect. Not bad, he mutters, then his gaze hardens. But meat spoils, steel lasts. He kicks the dead beast's tusk, the impact ringing like a bell. A dozen axes from Narzulbur's forges, that's the price of truce. Ugur's grip tightens on his knife, but you catch his wrist before he can speak. This isn't greed, it's another test. Orkish steel is legendary, each weapon a masterpiece of endurance and artistry. To demand it as tribute isn't just about arming Largashpur, it's about forcing Narzulbur to share its pride, to prove that trust outweighs tradition. You meet Garal's stare, the unspoken challenge hanging between you like a blade on a wire. Borgach won't like it. Ugur growls in your ear. You exhale slowly, watching your breath curl into the frozen air. Somewhere above, a lone raven circles, its shadow darting across the bloodied snow. No, you agree, but Larak might. The words taste like iron, like the first spark struck in a forge. The hunt was only ever the beginning. Now comes the harder fight, not with tusks and spears, but with hammers and fire, with the unyielding weight of choices that will echo long after the snow melts. The weight of Garal's demand hangs like an anvil around your neck as you cross Narzulbur's threshold, the scent of forged smoke and spilled mead sharp in the evening air. Larak sits at the head of the longhouse, his fingers drumming a slow, ominous rhythm on the hilt of his dagger. The moment you speak the words, a dozen axes, the room erupts. Borgakh's chair screeches backward as she surges to her feet, her voice a whip crack of outrage. You'd arm the dogs who gutted our scouts. Her glare could sear steel. Larach says nothing at first. His eyes flick to the bloodstains still darkening the palisade, then to the hollow-cheeked children huddled near the hearth, proof that hunger makes fools of even the proudest clans. You press on before the silence hardens into refusal. Largashpurs' forges are cold. Their hunters chew leather to quiet their stomachs. Give them steel, and they'll owe you more than raids. They'll owe you their shame. The gamble is delicate, a blade balanced on the edge of two truths. Orcs respect strength, but they never forget a debt. Gorbash, uncharacteristically quiet until now, leans forward. Malacath teaches that a gift given freely is no gift at all. He rumbles, but a gift that binds the receiver that is craft worthy of a chief. The words land like a hammer strike. Larach's nostrils flare, but his gaze shifts to the forge visible through the open door, where apprentices are already feeding the fires in anticipation of his decision. The tension breaks with a grunt. Borgach, Larach says at last, you'll oversee the work. Every axe bears Narzulbur's mark, deep enough to remind them whose hands shaped their survival. It's not surrender, it's strategy. That night, the forge glow paints the stronghold in flickering crimson. The rhythmic clang of hammers, a defiant counterpoint to the wind, howling down from the peaks. Borgakh works with grim precision, her usual artistry tempered by something darker. Each swing of her hammer embedding not just strength into the metal, but memory. You recognize the technique, the subtle wave in the steel, the way the edges taper just so. These aren't just weapons, they're messages. Uger finds you sweating over the bellows, your hands raw from hauling ore. Never thought I'd see the day we armed our enemies, he mutters, though his tone lacks its usual venom, when you nod toward the half-finished axe on the anvil, its grip wrapped in the same wolf hide Borgach uses for Narzulbur's own warriors. He exhales sharply. Clever, they'll hold our steel every time they fight, feel the weight of it. By dawn, 12 axes lie gleaming on a bed of fresh straw, their edges sharp enough to split moonlight. Larach runs a thumb along one blade, then nods to the waiting riders. Tell Garol this steel comes with a price. His chief dines at our table when the snows thaw. The unspoken terms hang in the frosty air. Not tribute, not truce, but the first fragile thread of something neither clan has dared in generations. Kinship forged in fire, not blood. As the riders vanish into the mist-shrouded pass, Borgakh wipes her brow with a soot-streaked arm, her gaze lingering on the empty forge. Hope is a fool's armor, she grumbles. But when she turns back to the anvil, there's a new intensity in her strikes, as if she's already shaping the next blade, not for war, but for the far more dangerous work of peace. The journey to Largashpur feels different this time. The weight of the axes strapped to the pack horse seems to pull the very earth beneath your feet. Each step, a negotiation between old wounds and fragile hope. Uger walks beside you in silence, his fingers brushing the hilt of his dagger whenever the wind carries sounds from the trees. The guards at Largashpur's gate don't sneer this time. Their eyes lock onto the bundled weapons with a mix of hunger and wariness, as if unsure whether to reach for them or recoil. Chief Masgur meets you in the shadow of their crumbling forge, her gaze lingering on the axes before flicking to your face. Narzulbur steel, she says, her voice stripped of its usual edge. I expected grudges, not gifts. Garol steps forward, his iron-ringed tusks glinting as he unwraps the first axe, testing its balance with a practiced swing. The blade hums through the air, a perfect, lethal harmony of form and function. For a heartbeat, the silence is so thick you could choke on it. Then Garol grunts, low and grudging. Borgach's work. I'd know the temper anywhere. The admission cracks something open. Around the fire that night, warriors from both clans sit closer than they have in decades, though the space between them still hums with tension. Masgur raises a tankard of bitter mushroom ale, her toast sharp as a blade's edge. To Malacath, may he judge the worth of this peace by the steel we wield, not the blood we've spilled. It's not forgiveness, it's not trust, but it's a start. You find yourself seated between Ugur and a Largashpur hunter named Morga, her knuckles scarred from a lifetime of bowstrings. When she leans over to tear a chunk of roast goat from the spit, her sleeve rides up, revealing a faded tattoo, a broken anvil, the mark of a clan that once warred with Narzulbur 3 generations back. Ugur spots it too, his jaw tightening, but before he can speak, you reach for the shared platter of honeyed roots, deliberately placing it between them. Malacath teaches that honor isn't just strength in battle. You say, your voice carrying just enough to be heard over the fire's crackle. It's knowing when to let the past rest. Morga's laugh is surprised, almost unwilling, spoken like someone who's never lost kin to a rival's axe. But she takes a root anyway, her fingers brushing Ugur's as she does. The contact is fleeting, electric. Across the fire, Garol watches with narrowed eyes, but when Masgur begins an old hunting ballad, one your own scholars claim originated in Orsinium's ruins, he joins in on the second verse, his voice rough but unmistakable. The feast doesn't erase decades of bloodshed. Hands still hover near weapons, and every laugh feels one wrong word away from a snarl. But when the embers burn low and the first stars pierce the smoke-heavy sky, something unspoken settles over the gathering. No oaths are sworn, no promises made. Yet as you rise to leave, Masgur stops you with a hand on your arm, her grip firm but not hostile. Tell Larak his steel will feed my children, she says quietly. And that Largashpur remembers its debts. The walk back to Narzulbur is quieter, the night air crisp with the promise of frost. Ugur kicks a pebble, watching it skitter into the dark. Never thought I'd live to see the day, he mutters. You don't ask what he means. The answer is there in the way his shoulders have lost their battle-ready tension, in the absence of glances thrown over his shoulder for arrows. Somewhere behind you, carried on the wind, comes the distant sound of a Largashpur horn. Not a war cry, but the call to morning watch, a small thing, an ordinary thing. But in the brittle dawn of this fragile peace, it sounds almost like hope. The seasons turn like the great wheel of a forge, each revolution tempering the fragile peace between Narzulbur and Largashpur into something stronger. Your journal pages fill with sketches and observations. The first joint hunting party, returning with a frost tusk, twice the size of last year's kill. The mingled laughter of children from both clans as they spar with wooden swords near the training yard. Even the rhythm of the stronghold changes. Borgach's anvil now rings with Largashpurs' raw iron, while Mazoga teaches Narzulbur's scouts the hidden trails of the eastern passes. The grudges haven't vanished, but they've been outnumbered by something more practical: the quiet understanding that survival tastes sweeter when shared. The most surprising change comes at the height of summer, when Ugur returns from a scouting trip with Morga at his side, her bow slung across his shoulder, as casually as if they'd always traveled together. No announcement is made, no feast thrown, just a gradual shifting of sleeping furs from one longhouse to another, a shared waterskin passed between them during drills. Larach watches from the high table, his expression unreadable, until the night Morga presents him with a dagger forged from Largashpur steel, but wrapped in Narzulbur leather. He tests the edge once, then slides it into his belt with a nod. The message is clear: some alliances need no oaths. Your days settle into a new rhythm. Mornings are spent recording Sharamph's herb lore, as she grumbles about scribbling down secrets better kept in the blood. Afternoons helping Gorbash negotiate trade routes with Breton merchants who still flinch at the sight of Orkish steel. The real revelations come in the evenings, though, when warriors from both clans gather around the fire and the old stories unfurl like battle standards. Largashpur's elders speak of the siege of Orsinium with a bitterness that mirrors Narzulbur's, but their version includes details your Cyrodiilic histories omitted: how the Daggerfall Covenant's betrayal came not just with swords, but with poisoned grain shipments. How the orcs who survived did so by eating their own armor straps. The journals pile up, their pages a tapestry of ink and pressed mountain flowers, of maps annotated with clan markings and recipes for salves that blend Narzulbur's yarrow with Largashpur's black lichen. What began as scholarly observation has become something more, a living record of a culture adapting without surrendering its spine. When a group of imperial scholars arrives under flag of parley, their quills poised to document this unprecedented experiment in Orkish diplomacy, it's Borgach who sets them straight. Experiment, she snorts, tossing a freshly honed axe onto their table. We didn't bend tradition, we reforged it. The real proof comes on the first snowfall, when Mazgur strides through Narzulbur's gates not as a supplicant, but as a guest of honor, her cloak lined with wolf pelts, gifted by Larach's own hunts. The feast that follows is louder than most, the boasting fiercer, as if both clans are determined to outdo the other in hospitality rather than bloodshed. You sit between Ugur and Gorbash, your fingers stained with ink and mead, watching as Larach raises a cup not just to Malacath, but to the future. No one misses the way his gaze lingers on the children, Narzulbur and Largashpur both, tangled together in sleep by the hearth, their faces peaceful in the firelight. Later, when the stars pierce the smoke hole overhead, Mazgur finds you at the edge of the celebration. Her fingers trace the spine of your latest journal, her voice softer than you've ever heard it. You see us clearer than most outsiders, she says. Then, with a warrior's bluntness, make sure they read this part too. She taps a page where you've sketched the clan's shared funeral rite, the way they now lay their dead side by side beneath the same mountain, their weapons crossed not in anger, but in kinship. The unspoken truth hangs between you. Peace is not the absence of conflict, but the choice to tend something harder and rarer than war. Outside, the wind carries the sound of the night watch's laughter. Two voices, once rivals, now harmonizing in the dark. The summons comes at dusk, delivered by a stone-faced warrior with ink still wet on his knuckles, the mark of a fresh oath. The great hall of Narzulbur is packed tighter than a smith's forge when you arrive, the air thick with the scent of sweat and smoked meat. Larach and Masgur sit at opposite ends of the carved oak table, their councils flanking them like warhounds waiting for the hunt. Garol leans against the far wall, arms crossed, his gaze tracking your every step. The silence is heavier than a mountain. Larach speaks first, his voice graveled by years of command. You've walked our paths, eaten our bread, spilled blood beside our kin. Now we ask, what do your imperial scholars whisper of us beyond these mountains? The question isn't casual. Rumors have trickled in with the traders of Legion scouts, sniffing at the passes, of merchant guilds offering gold for maps of stronghold territories. You choose honesty, though it burns like bad mead. They call you relics, warriors too proud to bend, even as the world changes around you. A ripple of growls answers you, but Masgur silences them with a raised hand. And what say you to that? She challenges, her fingers drumming the hilt of Larach's gifted dagger. The moment stretches, taut as a bowstring. You think of Sharamph's herb chest, half filled with cyrodiilic remedies now traded for Orkish poultices. Of Yugur and Morga's child, playing with wooden swords under Borgach's watchful eye. Isolation kept you strong, you admit, but it also left Largashpurs starving, Narzulbur bleeding. The world won't stop at your gates, not forever. Garol's laugh is sharp as a freshly honed blade, so we should roll over like hounds for the Imperials. Not roll over, stand taller. You meet his glare without flinching. Let them see what orcs truly are. Not just warriors, but smiths whose steel outlasts empires. Healers who can mend bones with mountain moss. Let them come as supplicants, not conquerors. The debate rages like a winter gale. Larach argues for tradition, Masgur for pragmatism, Garol for blood. But when Borgach rises, the room falls silent. Her hands, calloused from decades at the anvil, slam down a bundle on the table. 12 arrowheads, each stamped with Narzulbur's mark, their fletchings dyed with Largashpurs' clan colors. We spent generations fearing the outside, she growls. Now we trade steel with former enemies. Who's to say this isn't just another kind of forging? Dawn finds the council split, but not broken. A compromise is struck. Outsiders may enter, but only under the watch of both clans' warriors. Only for purposes the strongholds approve. And you, the one who walked both paths, will stand as their first intermediary, your loyalty sworn not to empire or clan, but to the truth between them. As the elders disperse, Gorbash catches your arm, his grip firm. Malacath teaches that strength is knowing when to yield, he murmurs, but also when to grip tighter. Outside, the first traders of the season wait at the gates, their carts laden with goods, and their eyes wide with wary curiosity. The world has come knocking at last. The strongholds, united, now choose how to answer. The morning mist clings to Narzulbur's battlements, like a reluctant farewell as you pack your journals, their pages swollen with pressed herbs, sketched runes, and ink-stained tales of a people the world often misunderstands. Borgach finds you at the gates, her usual scowl softened by something you can't quite name. Without a word, she presses a bundle into your hands. The leather wrap falls away to reveal a dagger, its blade rippled with the distinctive wave of Orkish steel, the hilt wrapped in the same wolf hide worn by Narzulbur's hunters. Malacath's teeth, she grunts. Don't let it rust. The weight of it settles in your palm, heavier than its size suggests. This isn't just a weapon. It's a signature, a mark of belonging stamped in fire and blood, as irrevocable as the runes carved into the sacred anvil. The stronghold itself seems unchanged at a glance. The forge still roars. The sentries still pace the walls with axes glinting. But the differences hum beneath the surface like a drumbeat. Only those who have walked these paths can hear. Children who once eyed you with suspicion now tug at your sleeve to show off their wooden swords. Sharamph mutters a half-hearted curse as she slips a pouch of her strongest poultices into your satchel. Even Garol, visiting from Largashpur, offers a curt nod, the closest thing to respect his pride will allow. Ugur and Morgo walk you to the pass, their steps synced in the easy rhythm of shared purpose. You'll return, Ugur says, not as a question but a fact, his hand resting on the shoulder of their little one, a child with Narzulbur's stubborn jaw and Largashpur's keen eyes. Morga smirks, tossing you a water skin. Next time, bring more of that cyrodiilic ink. The little ones like the colors. As the trail dips below the tree line, you glance back one last time. The stronghold's silhouette cuts into the dawn sky, unyielding as the mountains themselves. But the journals in your pack tell a different story, not of stone and steel, but of a people who bent without breaking. Of feasts where rival clans shared mead instead of blows, of hunters who traded secrets instead of arrows, of a scholar who arrived as an outsider and left with a dagger that whispers you are kin. The road ahead winds down to the Imperial Heartland, where scholars will pore over your notes with academic detachment. Let them, you'll tell of the orcs' honor, yes, their unshakable loyalty, their peerless craft, but also the warmth of a healer's hut thick with yarrow smoke, the sound of laughter echoing off forge walls, the way a shared enemy can become a shared future. Skyrim's people are more than the sum of their scars, and as the dagger's hilt presses against your ribs with every step, you realize something true. Neither of you will ever walk alone again.